Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is a channel for educational purposes. We take a look at great theories of everything, ancient and modern, and just try to expose them, show what you can do with them, how you can use theories of everything to help you in your own life. Today is our 532nd video that we've done on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. And this is a pretty much unknown theory that has great potential. It's a little bit difficult to get into. You have to really have gone through a few of his books before you can kind of get the hang of it. At least that was the case for me. But I think it's really great. And to show the power of it, Larson developed his two fundamental postulates in 1959 or so, and then went from those postulates through a process of deduction. He derived a theoretical universe, what his universe would look like if his theory was correct. And then he compared his theoretical universe with the measured experimental universe of modern science. And so Larson was able to basically recreate many of the scientific tables strictly from theory. These scientists are spending millions, billions of dollars in their laboratories to measure all the basic properties of matter, for example. You know, the melting point and the specific heat and the compressibility. And Larson is able to recreate their tables from theory. So, it has a great deal of power. You can apply it to non-scientific subjects as well. Larson has a book on metaphysics where he goes into religion and philosophy and psychology, biology, and today we're looking at one of his two books on economics. This is really the macroeconomics book called The Road to Permanent Prosperity. So Larson plugs his reciprocal system into the subject of economics and our prosperity, especially as a nation. And the basic idea behind Larson's system, it's one of the first, one of the only systems to be proposed on the back of motion. So in Larson's universe, the universe is not made out of matter, it's not made out of energy, but it is made out of motion. And for Larson, motion was the relationship between space and time. That is a reciprocal relationship between space and time. So Larson's first postulate reads, the universe is composed entirely of one component, motion, existing in 3 dimensions, in discrete units, and with 2 reciprocal aspects, space and time. And he takes that original postulate and kind of plugs it into the kind of consensus ideas. Second postulate is that the universe conforms to the relations of ordinary commutative mathematics. Its primary magnitudes are absolute, and its geometry is Euclidean. And from there, he derives his fundamental, theoretical universe. Now, how he plugs it into economics is telling, because, Larson's theory is a generalized theory. And so you can plug it into any subject that you want. But to really figure out how to do that, you kind of have to see how Larson did it in, various subjects. And so that's why we're taking a look at many of his different works. We've looked at his book on chemistry, basic properties of matter, and some of his work on astronomy, some of his work on atomic physics in the book Nothing But Motion. We've looked at his book Beyond Space and Time on metaphysics. And we've looked at several articles and other offerings from some of his associates on subjects such as geology and meteorology and astronomy. And so we're trying to get some broad coverage of how Larson operates. Now, in this book, The Road to Permanent Prosperity, we have gone through the first 5 chapters so far. And, first Larson, distinguishes his work from what he calls sociological work of the mainstream economists, that they are more bent on policy. They have a political axe to grind, and whether they're conservatives or liberals or whatever, Marxists, they have certain beliefs, and they try to put their belief systems into their economics. A lot of them try to help the poor, for example, and so they put together economic packages that help the poor, like raising the minimum wage or something like that. And Larson says that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing economic science, or what Ron Satz calls econophysics. Your economic system has to be based on reality, on facts. You can't set up a system that is not in harmony with the facts, just like you can't build a bridge that doesn't comply with laws of physics. And then he really tries to boil down economics to its bare bones, using Robinson Crusoe deserted island economics. Just start with the absolute most simple aspects and then start putting in. So the first stage of economics is just Robinson Crusoe, and then the second stage is where he finds somebody to barter with. And now we're getting to chapter 6, where he's on the money economy. So this is the next stage of economic development. What he has determined, the iron law of economics, is basically work or starve, and that the two reciprocal entities, just like space and time in the universe of motion, in the economic system, the two reciprocal entities he finds are production and consumption. And they are two, sides of the same coin, just like space and time are. In Larson's system, all of our scientific entities are fractions, with space or time as the numerator and time or space as the denominator. And space or time can have multiple exponents. I'm not sure about the exponents with the production and consumption, but basically, production leads to purchasing power, consumption is of goods. And those are quantities that are conserved. And so that's kind of a short summary of the first 5 chapters. But really, if you want to get into it, you want to go back about 2 weeks on my videos and listen from the top. Also, if you want a more detailed explanation of the reciprocal system in general, you want to watch one of my first 474 videos on the subject. But for now, we're going to get into reading from chapter 6, which is called The Money Economy. The third stage of economic development is reached when a medium of exchange is introduced. This is a far-reaching modification of the economic organization and greatly increases the complexity of the economic process. Instead of one market transaction, exchange of goods, also known as purchasing power, for goods, also known as articles of consumption. We now have two separate transactions: exchange of goods for money and exchange of money for goods. It is clear, however, that the double transaction does not arrive at any different result. It merely reaches the same result by a more circuitous route. This is typical of economic evolution in general. The fundamental objectives remain the same, but the process by which they are reached becomes more complex. As long as each person consumes that which he produces, economics is still in the amoeboid stage. But when specialization enters the scene, it becomes necessary to introduce a process of exchange whereby the various kinds of goods desired for consumption can be obtained in return for the specialized goods that are produced. The simplest way of accomplishing this result is a direct exchange, but this process of barter is awkward and inconvenient. So, for greater efficiency, a system has been devised whereby the exchange is handled in two steps through the medium of money, which when the two steps are complete, however, the final result is exactly the same as if the transactions had been carried out by means of barter. The goods have been exchanged, and nothing else of a significant nature has transpired. The money has not been altered in amount, and it is right back where it started from. A useful analogy drawn from the physical world is the cooling of a gasoline engine. In this case, the objective we wish to accomplish is to transfer heat from the engine cylinders to the surrounding air. We can do this in one step, analogous to barter, by direct contact, as in many aircraft engines and in some automobiles. But most automotive designers have found it convenient to use a transfer medium, analogous to money, which is usually water. The heat is first passed from the cylinders to the cooling water, and then from the water to the air. The final result of this two-step process is exactly the same as when the cooling is accomplished by direct contact of air with the engine cylinders. The circulating medium has not been altered in any way, either in amount or in composition. Its only function has been to contribute to the efficiency and convenience of the primary process. In both the engine cooling and the goods transaction, a single operation has been carried out in two steps. The objective is not reached until both steps have been taken. Transfer of the engine heat to the cooling water is only half of the operation, and it accomplishes nothing by itself, as a motorist soon discovers if his radiator plugs up. The cooling system does not serve its purpose unless the second step is taken and the heat is transferred from the cooling water to the air. Similarly, exchange of goods for money is an incomplete transaction, only half of the total operation. The seller is not willing to stop here. He attaches no value to money per se. It has a value to him only as purchasing power by means of which he can buy goods. As in the case of the engine cooling, the transaction is not complete until the money proceeds of the original sale have been exchanged for other goods. The net effect of the transaction as a whole is therefore the same as that of direct barter. Goods, as purchasing power, have been exchanged for goods as articles of consumption. The general conclusions reached in this work by application of scientific methods and procedures are summed up in the form of a series of basic principles governing those aspects of production, exchange, and consumption that are pertinent to the objectives of this work. These principles are the economic equivalent in the area that they cover of the laws of the physical sciences. They are independent of the particular forms of business and governmental institutions in vogue at the moment. They are as applicable to simple barter as to the most highly developed money and credit economy. They hold good under socialism, communism, fascism, or any other ism, just as they do under the American individual enterprise system. The situations appropriate to some of these principles do not arise under the more primitive forms of economic organization, but whenever and wherever they do arise, these principles govern. It is not contended that the principles are usually valid or approximately correct, but that they are always valid and mathematically exact. The principles are simple, they are expressed in plain and unequivocal language, and their validity can easily be verified. Furthermore, none of these principles is dependent in any way on the nature of human behavior. This assertion may be hard to accept after the way in which it has been drilled into us for decades that economics is a study of man's actions and hence is essentially different in character from the physical sciences. But the truth is that applied science is also concerned primarily with human action. Certainly, the building of a bridge is the work of human beings. So is the design of an airplane, the synthesis of a new drug, the drilling of an oil well, or any other of the thousands of engineering and scientific tasks that might be mentioned. Science, pure and applied, deals with human actions, but not with the human aspect of those actions. The function of the physical sciences is to tell us what consequences will follow if specific actions are taken, or alternatively, what actions are necessary in order to achieve certain specific results. Economic science can do exactly the same thing. It cannot make our economic decisions for us any more than structural theory can decide whether we should build a new post office, or organic chemistry can decide whether we should make synthetic rubber. But it can tell us specifically and accurately, just as the physical sciences do in their respective spheres, what consequences will follow if we take certain actions, and it will thus enable us to adapt our economic actions to the results that we want to achieve. The first of these principles that will be stated is the basic principle discussed in Chapter 3 that defines production as the only source of purchasing power. Principle 1. Purchasing power is created solely by the production of transferable utilities, and it is not extinguished until those utilities are destroyed by consumption or otherwise. So that's kind of similar to the work or starve concept. The reason for specifying that the utilities must be transferable should be clear. Goods that have utility only to the producer or to their present owner have no status as purchasing power, regardless of the magnitude of that utility. A second-hand watch possesses transferable utility and constitutes purchasing power, while a used dental plate does not, even though the latter may rank considerably higher in the esteem of the present owner. In the barter stage of economic organization, where goods are exchanged directly for other goods, it is apparent that only goods can pay for goods. Now we see that the money economy does exactly the same thing, merely doing it indirectly rather than directly. Thus, the same principle applies. Principle 2. Only goods can pay for goods. In earlier times, when this principle was emphasized in the economics textbooks, it was customary to add the qualification, in the long run. Recognition of the incomplete status of the first step, the exchange of goods for money, makes this qualification unnecessary. Money is actually no more than a claim against the goods that have been produced, a claim that must ultimately be redeemed in goods of equal value. Of course, where money has an intrinsic value as goods, as in the case of the rare metals, that portion of the face value of money that represents a value as goods is a partial payment. Principles 1 and 2 are closely related. Since only goods can supply the ultimate purchasing power necessary to complete the two-step economic transaction, only the production of goods can create purchasing power. Whatever money purchasing power is obtained by any other means is only an additional claim against the same goods. It does not add to the total real purchasing power. It merely dilutes the value of the previously existing claims. But even though the medium of exchange has no effect on the overall accomplishment of the economic activity, it does play a very important part in the operation of the economic mechanism, and we will now want to give it some further consideration. The characteristics of money and money substitutes will be discussed at length later. The rest of money is acceptance. If a commodity is accepted as a medium of exchange, that is, accepted not only for its own utility, but as something that can be exchanged for other goods, then it is money. If not, it is not money. When we go a step farther and ask why certain commodities such as gold and silver are accepted as money, whereas most goods are not, we find that there are a number of requirements which a commodity must meet in order to be entirely suitable for use as a medium of exchange. The essential point is that variations in value must be minimized. This in turn means that the time and place utilities must be approximately constant. A circulating medium consisting of commodities of this nature or credit instruments that have a similar acceptance as money thus provides a means by which the full value of goods, including that of their highly perishable time and place utilities, can be transformed into a relatively permanent kind of value that can be used at the time and place most convenient for the possessor. The only kinds of money accepted as such in the United States at present are the coins and currency issued by government agencies. The money supply, as defined by economists, includes a number of other items, but unlike money, these items are not claims against goods, they are claims against certain specific quantities of money, and they have value only to the extent that such quantities of money actually exist and are available. Bank deposits, for instance, the largest item in the so-called money supply, are claims against whatever money the bank may possess, the bank reserves, but these are much smaller than the total of the deposits. If the depositors write checks for a larger amount, the bank must arrange to obtain additional money from the Federal Reserve or some other suitable source, or some other outside source. Gold and silver were once widely accepted as money, and gold still has this status to some extent. In the United States, however, the monetary metals must be sold, like other goods, to obtain money, and they do not add to the total money in use. The same is true of the various credit instruments classified as, quote, near money. From the foregoing, it can be seen that only the authorized government agencies can create money. It follows that the money in the economic system is conserved and does not vary in total quantity except to the extent that it is created or retired by these agencies. A small amount of destruction by fire, etc., occurs, but for analytical purposes, we can consider the destructive forces as the equivalent of authorized government agencies. The difference between this view of the money situation and that found in the current literature of the economic profession is that present-day economic thinking does not distinguish clearly between that which has actual value and that which is merely a claim against values. Money is a claim against the goods that are produced. A quantity of the bank money or near money that the economists are including in their definition of the money supply is only a claim against a claim. It does not add to the total of the claims against production, as a corresponding increase in the amount of money would do. Thus, it has a much different effect on the streams of economic activity, as we will see later. Because of the approximate constancy of value of the medium of exchange, its introduction has done more than provide a common denominator to facilitate the exchange transaction. It has enabled storage of claims against goods independent of goods storage. This is a very significant point, but its major implications have been almost entirely overlooked by previous investigators because they have failed to appreciate the fundamental difference between drawing purchasing power from storage and creating it by production of goods. We will call the facilities for storage of money or goods reservoirs. In the modern economies, there are several different kinds of money reservoirs, but they all accomplish exactly the same result, a point that we will find very significant when we begin consideration of the methods that can be used for control of the reservoir transactions. The money storage may be done directly in a money reservoir, a bank, a pocketbook, or an old tin can. Or government agencies may issue or retire money, or a nation's currency may be acquired by foreign countries, which are then acting as reservoirs, so far as the domestic economy is concerned. Or gold may be mined and used for money, not in the U.S. today. The activity in and out of these reservoirs is easily monitored, and the information required for control over the reservoir transactions is therefore readily available if and when a decision is made to institute some kind of control. Increases in the market prices of existing goods, particularly stocks, shares in the ownership of business enterprises, are often looked upon as sources of purchasing power. But these increases do not provide money purchasing power unless the goods are sold. And when the sale takes place, it absorbs as much purchasing power from the buyer as it provides to the seller. Thus, a transaction of this kind does not provide any more total purchasing power. It merely transfers purchasing power from one individual or group to another. With the benefit of a realization that there are reservoirs in the circulating stream of money, purchasing power, that have a profound effect on the flow from production to the markets, it is now possible to return to the creation of purchasing power and to clear up another issue, the quantity that is created. Here again, the facts are clear and unmistakable. Production of goods and creation of purchasing power are one and the same thing. That which we produce is purchasing power to us, but goods, or articles of consumption, to others. That which others produce is purchasing power to them, but goods to us. So, principle 3. Purchasing power and goods are simply two aspects of the same thing. They are produced at the same time, by the same act, and in the same quantity. Production in excess of purchasing power is mathematically impossible. Nothing can exceed itself. It is immaterial whether the relative values of goods rise or fall. If the purchasing power of certain goods decreases because of a drop in relative value, the purchasing power required to buy those goods decreases by exactly the same amount. Okay, we're going to stop right there. And I think we'll probably go back and review principle number 3 right there when we start up again tomorrow. I think he has like 17 of these principles, so they get a little bit more complicated as we move along, and they get a little bit hard to keep track of, but if you're keeping score at home, number 2, goods only pay for goods, and number 1 was basically work or starve. And then number 3, purchasing power and goods are the same, created in the same act, in the same quantity, but from different perspectives. Okay, thanks for tuning in today, and hopefully you'll tune in tomorrow when we move on here on Chapter 6 on the money economy. Dewey B. Larson, The Road to Permanent Prosperity. Thanks for tuning in today.